Yeah, it's definitely got some fire. But I think, that heat might actually be burning the author's own credibility a little bit.
I completely agree. Let's just dive straight into the writing itself, because I think there's a major issue right on the surface. The piece dilutes its own analytical authority by relying on these really emotionally charged adjectives, instead of just letting her own words do the work.
That was the absolute first thing that jumped out at me. I'm reading the part about her 2017 SNL monologue, and the author calls it a promotion of a culture of degeneracy.
Then a paragraph later, the Charlie's Angels reboot is just straight up labeled trash. And look, I get it. Typing "this movie was trash" feels good.
It does. It's cathartic.
But does it actually convince anyone who isn't already, on your side?
No, that's exactly the problem. It's preaching to the choir. If I'm a reader who's maybe on the fence about Stewart, or I just think she's an okay actress who makes some weird choices,
Right.
and I see the word trash or degeneracy, I immediately clock the writer as biased. I think, okay, this isn't an analysis, this is a rant. And then I just stop taking the valid point seriously.
You've handed the reader a reason to stop listening. You're basically stepping in front of your own evidence and telling them how to feel.
Okay, so let's workshop that. The Charlie's Angels example. The draft says she starred in the trash reboot of Charlie's Angel. It's weak, it's subjective.
Yeah.
What if we just stripped out that adjective and replaced it with cold, hard numbers?
Exactly. Imagine if it read something like, despite a massive marketing push, the film failed to recoup its production budget domestically,
Oh, that's so much better.
scoring a 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is so much more devastating.
It really is. I mean, trash is an opinion. Failed to recoup its budget is a fact. You can argue with an opinion, you can't really argue with a ledger.
As objective metrics, you're not just calling it bad. You're proving that the audience, the very people she now wants to force-feed films to, already rejected her.
It creates a much deeper sense of irony, doesn't it? It sets up the whole rest of the argument.
It does. And we should apply that same forensic lens to the SNL monologue.
The degeneracy comment? Yeah, that word's a trap. It just sounds so dated, like a moral judgment from the 50s.
It's too easy for a modern reader to just roll their eyes and move on. So instead of moralizing, the writer should just analyze the strategy. She's quoted as saying, "I'm like so gay, dude."
Right.
Don't call it degenerate. Frame it as the moment of the pivot.
Oh, that's interesting. So you treat it like a business decision?
Exactly. You could write something like, "In this moment, Stewart signaled a strategic shift, prioritizing a specific identity politic over the broad, universal appeal that defined her career in the Twilight era." You're not calling names, you're just pointing out that she voluntarily narrowed her own audience.
That is so much harder to argue with. It turns the piece from a culture war complaint into like a sharp career analysis.
And what about that woke version comment for Charlie's Angels? The author seems really angry about that in the current draft.
Again, let her words do the work. The author is sort of yelling, "Look how woke this is." But the quote is the real weapon. She called it a woke version. She's the one who admitted it wasn't just an action movie.
It was a vehicle for an ideology.
So just highlight that disconnect. Charlie's Angels is supposed to be this huge commercial franchise, popcorn fun. If the star herself is selling it as a political text, that's a marketing failure. Let that contradiction just sit there on the page.
You don't need adjectives when your subject is doing the work for you.
Exactly.
And speaking of contradictions, that actually brings us to the core argument here. I think the article misses a huge opportunity to really dissect the logistical and philosophical irony of her main claim.
This is the part I really wanted the writer to dig into. The headline is that she's moving to Europe to make movies to shove down the throat of America. And the current draft just treats that as, a hostile statement. Like, oh, she's being mean to us.
It's not just mean, it's illogical. It's a total paradox. And the critique needs to be structured around that paradox.
It's the exile versus the evangelist problem.
Yes.
She wants to leave the broken reality of America, but she wants to make content specifically for the people she's leaving. It's like breaking up with someone but promising to text them every day to tell them how to live their life.
That is the perfect analogy. And the writer needs to lean into that. Why is she still obsessed with the American audience if she's so eager to leave America?
It's a supply and demand problem, which the author barely even touches on.
Right. So the author should be posing a rhetorical question. Something like, if she cannot work freely in the United States,
which is her claim, how on earth does she expect the U.S. distribution system to just accept and promote her European film?
That's a great point. Does she think European films just magically appear in American theaters? She's relying on the very machine that she claims is broken.
And that connects directly to her comments about bare-knuckle brawling. The author quotes that from 2025, but doesn't really connect the dots.
The bare-knuckle brawling comment is her basically admitting that she knows nobody wants this stuff.
Yes.
She knows she has to fight to get it made, but she mistakes a lack of demand for, like, censorship or oppression.
That's the insight. That is exactly where the writer needs to go. Frame this not just as anger, but as a fundamental misunderstanding of how the film economy works. You can't force consumption. People will just not buy a ticket.
It really highlights the futility of the threat. She says she wants to create the reality we want to live in, but she needs the American audience to validate that reality by buying a ticket.
If we don't watch, her reality doesn't exist. She's trapped.
And by focusing on that trap, the economic and logical trap, the article moves from a complaint about her attitude to a really sharp critique of her strategy. It makes the author look smarter and the subject look, well, confused.
Which is a far more devastating critique than just calling her names.
It creates a sense of pity almost, which is deadly for a celebrity who wants to be feared.
Now, to get to that level of analysis, the writer needs to clear up some space. And that brings us to the pacing issue, specifically that whole section with the 2025 Academy Women's Luncheon.
Oh, man, I really struggled with this part of the draft. I mean, the writer just drops these massive block quotes right in the middle of the piece.
It completely disrupts the pacing, including these long block quotes from that 2025 speech. It just dilutes the urgency of the new Europe announcement.
Yeah, we're reading whole paragraphs about wage gaps and taxes on tampons and eating the podium. And I get why the author put them in. They want to show her mindset.
Of course.
But reading raw block quotes feels like I'm reading a transcript. It's not curated analysis. It's just data.
It stops the momentum cold. We've just been talking about this explosive shove it down their throat threat, and suddenly we're wading through a lecture on tampon taxes. The reader just checks out.
So what's the fix? I mean, we can't just cut it all. There's good stuff in there.
You have to synthesize. The writer needs to act like an editor here, extract only the victimhood narrative elements that clashed so perfectly with her aggressive threats.
So instead of quoting the whole paragraph about silencing, we just summarize it?
Yes. You write something like, in 2025, Stewart claims she was not even supposed to be angry, painting herself as a silenced victim. And then, boom, you hit them with the contrast. Yet, less than a year later, she's openly threatening to force-feed content to the American public.
That contrast tells the story right there. The victimhood versus the aggression.
Exactly.
What about that contortionist skills line? That was buried in a block quote, but I thought it was pretty evocative.
You dig that out. You pull the specific phrase, contortionist skills, and reclaim the gratitude, and you juxtapose those words against her desire to inflict cinema on people. She's demanding gratitude while promising punishment.
That's the hypocrisy. She wants us to say thank you while she's shoving the movie down our throats.
Precisely. And the state of emergency comment from that speech?
That feels important because it kind of explains the whole move to Europe.
Right. But don't just quote it. Use it to frame the narrative. Say that she views Hollywood as a state of emergency, a war zone. That's why she's retreating to Europe. It transforms the quote from random filler into a supporting beam for the main argument.
It makes the writing so much tighter. You're respecting the reader's time. You're doing the work of digestion for them.
And speaking of doing the work, we need to look at how this whole timeline is put together. Because right now, the connection between her past and the present, it isn't fully established.
Yeah, I felt a bit of whiplash reading it. We start with the New Europe stuff, then we jump back to SNL in 2017, then Charlie's Angels in 2018, then forward to the speech in 2025. It feels a bit like a laundry list. Here are 5 things she did that annoyed me.
Exactly. It lacks a narrative arc.
The historical timeline needs stronger connective tissue. It needs to prove a pattern of escalation. We aren't just listing grievances. We are tracking the radicalization of a celebrity.
Radicalization is the right word. It feels like she's getting more extreme as her audience gets more distant. So the suggestion is to restructure this, do it chronologically, or at least thematically, to show that slide. Frame the Europe move not as a random decision, but as the inevitable final step of her alienation.
Okay, walk me through that. How would you structure the chapters of that story?
Okay, so you start in 2017. The SNL monologue. Frame that as the announcement. That's where she tells the world, I am changing my brand.
Got it. And then 2018.
Charlie's Angels. Frame that as the rejection. She made the new brand's product, she put it out there, and the market said, no thank you.
Which leads to the resentment.
Right. So 2025, the Academy speech. Frame that as the rationalization. She was rejected. So now she has to invent a reason why. It's not that the movie was bad, it's that the audience is sexist, or the industry is broken, or...
There's a state of emergency.
Yes. And finally, the current news, 2026. The retreat. Or maybe the retaliation. It's the final step. She announced, she was rejected, she rationalized, and now she is retreating to launch an attack from afar.
That's a really compelling narrative. It makes the article feel like a complete psychological profile. It almost turns it into a tragedy.
It's a study of a career, and it allows for much better transition sentences. You can link the woke version comment directly to the bare-knuckle brawling comment to show how her strategy has hardened over the years.
It shows that this isn't random. It's a trajectory.
And when you lay it out like that, the shove it down their throat comment makes perfect logical sense. It's the lash out of someone who tried to be nice, in her view, tried to explain it, and has now just decided to go to war.
By restructuring the timeline, the author can make a much more profound point about the relationship between a celebrity and an audience. It's not just about Kristen Stewart. It's about what happens when an artist stops respecting their patron.
Precisely. It turns the piece from just a quick blog post into a serious cultural critique.
I think these changes are going to make a huge difference.
I agree. So let's bring this all together. Let's recap the main actionable advice for the listener to take into the rewrite.
First thing. The adjectives. We need to strip out those subjective insults. Cut trash, cut degeneracy.
Replace them with hard evidence. Use the box office numbers. Use her specific quotes about identity politics. Just trust the reader to see the absurdity without a neon sign pointing at.
Second, the logic. Drill down into that economic paradigm. Don't just report the threat to shove movies. Analyze why it's basically impossible.
Lean into that exile versus evangelist conflict. Explore the irony of leaving a market you're obsessed with influencing. Point out that she needs the very system she claims to hate.
Third, the pacing. You've got to synthesize those speeches. Don't let huge block quotes kill your momentum.
Extract the gems. Find those key words like contortionist and gratitude and weave them into your own sentences. Create that contrast between her victim language and her aggressor actions.
And final, the struct. Build the timeline.
Create that narrative arc. Announcement, rejection, rationalization, retreat. Show the escalation over time. Make it a story, not just a list.
If the author can apply these structural edits, this piece is going to hit so much harder. It'll be rigorous, persuasive, and frankly, intellectually bulletproof.
We really encourage the listener to apply these edits. Take the raw material, apply this framework, and create a critique that hits harder because it's smarter.
And once you've done that, please submit the revised draft back to us. We would love to see how this narrative tightens up.
Thank you for listening to The Critique. We look forward to seeing your improved work.